The sun blazed mercilessly over the small village of Wimbe in Malawi, its rays scorching the earth and leaving it cracked and barren. The land, once fertile and teeming with life, had turned into a desolate wasteland. The crops that once fed the village had withered away, leaving behind nothing but dry stalks and dust. The rivers had run dry, and the wells were empty. The people of Wimba were starving, their bodies weakened by hunger and their spirits crushed by despair. 14-year-old William Kamkwamba stood in the middle of the village, his bare feet sinking into the dry, cracked earth. He looked around at the faces of his neighbors, faces etched with exhaustion and hopelessness. His own family was no better off. His father, Trywell, a farmer, had lost his entire harvest to the drought. His mother, Agnes, struggled to feed their 7 children with the little they had. William had been forced to drop out of school because his parents could no longer afford the fees. He spent his days helping his family scavenge for food and water. But it was never enough. As he stood there, watching the endless suffering around him, William felt a deep sense of helplessness. He wanted to do something, anything, to save his family and his village. But what could a boy with no education, no money, and no resources do? And then he saw it, a piece of rusted metal lying in the dirt. It was just a scrap, discarded and forgotten, but to William it was something more. It was an idea, a spark, a way out. While others saw junk, he saw possibility. William had always been curious. Even as a young boy, he loved taking things apart to see how they worked. He would tinker with broken radios, old bicycles, and anything else he could find, trying to understand the mechanics behind them. But his curiosity had always been limited by his circumstances. He had no tools, no materials, and no one to teach him. When the drought hit, William's world shrank even further. With no school to attend and no food to eat, he spent his days wandering the village, searching for something, anything, that could help his family survive. It was during one of these wanderings that he stumbled upon the local library. The library was a small, run-down building with a few shelves of books, most of them old and dusty. William had never been inside before. He had always thought of books as something for educated people, not for someone like him. But desperate times called for desperate measures. He began sneaking into the library, hoping to find something, anything, that could help him. One day, as he was browsing the shelves, he came across a book with a picture of a windmill on the cover. The title read, "Using Energy," and it was filled with diagrams and explanations of how windmills could generate electricity and pump water. William's heart raced as he flipped through the pages. Here was the answer he had been searching for. The book was in English, a language William barely understood. The words were difficult to read, and the concepts were complex. But the images spoke to him. He studied the diagrams carefully, trying to make sense of how the windmill worked. He didn't have the tools or materials to build one, but he had something even more important: determination. William knew that building a windmill would not be easy. He had no money to buy materials, no tools to work with, and no one to guide him. But he refused to give up. He began searching for scraps, anything he could use to build his windmill. He rummaged through junkyards, collected rusty bicycle parts, old PVC pipes, and broken fan blades. He even dismantled his father's broken bicycle to use its frame. The villagers watched him with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "What is this boy doing?" they asked. Is he building a toy? When William told them he was building a windmill to generate electricity and pump water, they laughed. A windmill! Impossible, they said. You're just a boy. What do you know about building machines? But William didn't listen to the naysayers. He was determined to prove them wrong. Day after day, he worked on his windmill. He hammered, sawed, and pieced together the scraps he had collected. His hands were calloused and bleeding, but he didn't stop. He worked tirelessly, driven by the belief that he could make a difference. The process was not without its challenges. There were times when William felt like giving up. The materials he had collected were not enough, and he had to search for more. The windmill blades he built were too heavy and wouldn't spin properly. The dynamo he had salvaged from a broken radio didn't generate enough electricity, but with each failure, William learned something new. He adjusted his design, improved his techniques, and kept going. After weeks of struggle, frustration, and sweat, William was finally ready to test his windmill. He had built a wooden tower to hold the windmill high above the ground, where it could catch the wind. At the top of the tower, he had attached the makeshift blades he had crafted from old fan blades and PVC pipes. At the base of the tower, he had connected a small dynamo to a light bulb. The village gathered to watch. Some came out of curiosity, others out of amusement. They had all heard about the boy who was building a windmill, and they wanted to see if it would actually work. William stood at the base of the tower, his heart pounding. He had worked so hard for this moment, and now it all came down to this. He looked up at the windmill, waiting for the wind to blow. Then, a breeze. The blades began to turn slowly at first, then faster and faster. The dynamo at the base of the tower began to hum, and the light bulb flickered. Then, light! Gasps filled the air. The villagers stared in disbelief as the light bulb glowed brightly, powered by the windmill. They had never seen anything like it before. Electricity, generated from nothing but the wind. William's heart swelled with pride. He had done it. He had built a windmill that could generate electricity. But he wasn't done yet. With the success of his first windmill, William set his sights on an even bigger goal, building a second windmill to pump water. He knew that if he could pump water from the ground, he could irrigate the fields and save the crops. It would mean the end of the drought and the beginning of a new life for his village. Using the same determination and resourcefulness that had driven him to build the first windmill, William began working on the second. He collected more scraps, improved his design, and worked tirelessly to bring his vision to life. When the second windmill was finally completed, it was a moment of triumph. The villagers watched in awe as water began to flow from the ground, pumped by the windmill. The fields that had been dry and barren for so long were now irrigated, and the crops began to grow. The impact was immediate. The village, once on the brink of starvation, was now thriving. The people had food to eat, water to drink, and hope for the future. William's windmills had saved them. News of William's achievement spread quickly. Scientists and journalists from around the world traveled to Wimba to see the windmills for themselves. They were amazed by what this young boy had accomplished with nothing but scraps and determination. William was invited to speak at global conferences, where he shared his story and inspired millions. He received scholarships to continue his education, and he went on to study engineering at Dartmouth College in the United States. Years later, William Kamkwamba's windmills still stand in Wimbe, a testament to the power of determination and innovation. But his impact goes far beyond his village. William's story has inspired countless people around the world to believe in the power of their own ideas and to never give up, no matter how impossible their dreams may seem. William has continued to build and innovate, using his skills to bring electricity and clean water to rural communities in Malawi and beyond. He has written a book, The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, which tells his story in his own words. His story has also been adapted into a film, bringing his message of hope and perseverance to an even wider audience. Today, William Kamkwamba is a symbol of what's possible when you refuse to give up. His windmills are not just machines, they are symbols of hope, resilience, and the power of a single spark to change the world. One boy, one windmill, a world forever changed. Because sometimes all it takes is a single spark.